YouTube Battlefield open beta is out. Let's talk about it. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? There's a lot that goes into this. The beta is very simple of what you're actually allowed to do. You can play one game mode and one map. You can play Conquest on one map that I don't even remember the name of, but it's a big expansive map with a big rocket. It's cool. It's gimmicky. I don't know. It feels like something's off. Like something's missing. Let me open up the Gojj pad and let's kind of talk through it. And I think there's going to be a lot that goes into this conversation about why I think there's some issues. So let's open up the Gojj pad. I'm also going to open up a tweet from a good friend of mine over here on the side. So JGOD tweeted out, a lot of people have asked if I plan to cover the new Battlefield. If I like it, I will cover it. If not, then I won't. As simple as that. Odds are any content I do make related to it will be on the second channel. And then he quote tweeted it finally after his tweet in June and said, turns out I do not like it and therefore do not plan to cover it. Hope the Battlefield community gets what they want out of the game, but it's not for me. All right, well, that answered our question. A bunch of comments saying Battlefailed 2042, which is hilarious, by the way. I hope that's not the case because it's bad for gaming when AAA games flop, allows for their competition to be complacent while lowering standards. All right, so this is where my thoughts start coming into play because I commented under his tweet, which got a couple good, likes under his tweet about my thoughts about the game and something that Doug and I have been talking about quite a bit. Something that I've said, this will frame our conversation today about what I think about Battlefield. The devs of Battlefield have tried with this game to bring in a new audience by introducing other, I'll say features maybe, similar to other games. Okay, so this is the first point. And let me read my comment down here about my thoughts about it, and then I'll kind of explain each individual piece. I said the beta feels like they were trying to expand player base outside of Battlefield niche playstyle by catering to other player bases. I ran out of characters here. Loyalists going to be mad, new players may be attracted, but then feel like it's the worst version of the franchise of their choice. What I mean by that is the devs of Battlefield have tried with this game to bring in a new audience by introducing features similar to other games. We're talking about the way the sprint and slide mechanics work. We're talking about grapple guns. We're talking about, the way the guns feel. Like a lot of these different things that have changed a little bit from past Battlefields is the idea that the devs are trying to bring in this kind of Call of Duty-esque feel, specifically the movement, right? However, they still maintain a lot of the original Battlefield type modes, features, etc. as well. Okay, so it sounds like a good thing at first. They're trying to expand their player base outside of their original Battlefield player base, and they've also maintained some of their original Battlefield intent. On paper and from the devs' perspective, this is not a bad thing. They're like, hey, let's kind of innovate, let's kind of change the way our game is played a little bit, and then and then we're trying to maintain some sort of original Battlefield type features and modes to make it feel still like Battlefield. So what they're really trying to do is cater, if they can, cater to new and old players, right? Just like any other game would want to do. This is a good goal to have if you're a AAA game, because you have to try to bring in new players to continue to drive up, the value of your game and how many people are playing it, the streamers, content creators, etc. Like, you want to expand your player base, and this is how they decided to do it. However, the problem is the way the game currently feels. It feels like Battlefield added in some extra features and diluted the original Battlefield feel while adding in these new features that are just not as good as some other battle royales or other games. So the problem is that you're going to be losing players from your OG days while trying to gain new players that are originally going to be attracted to it because of the feel of it, and then realize that the feel of it is just a worse version of the original game that they liked. So for instance, Let's talk about how like the new Battlefield feels more like COD than in terms of movement and gunplay than it has in the past, right? And so a lot of the COD players that are coming over, because the COD players, meaning like Warzone players, etc., are coming over to this space and saying, hey, do we like this game now because it's a little bit better, it's graphically better, it's, you know, I will say Lion also is making a good point. Apex is maybe a good, I'll say COD slash Apex, because it's kind of a mix between the two, to be honest with you, in terms of movement and gunplay than it has in the past, right? They're trying to bring in this new player base of like, hey, we've got more mobility, we've got blah 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 blah. But this is pissing off Battlefield OGs. If you were to go to like the Reddit of Battlefield, yeah, the sliding does feel very Apex. If you go to the Reddit of Battlefield, they are ripping this game apart based on the beta. Okay, like absolutely ripping it apart. It's insane. And then the new players that come in, whether it's Apex, COD players, come in and honestly have some fun for a bit. This is how I felt. Apex and COD players come in and have some fun for a bit and then get bored. And this is the question. Are they bored because the game is boring, or are they bored because it's not a BR? And that's really where this expands into a much larger conversation, is that the Battle Royale game mode and play style and stakes and win conditions feel much more enticing for players and viewers than the current Battlefield game mode that they're giving us. Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. Battlefield beta only gave us, right? It only gave us one map and one mode, right? Which was Conquest. And I get why they did Conquest. This is like the classic. I think it's called Conquest. This is the classic, right? This is the classic game mode for Battlefield. It's where you have all the different objectives. You have A, B, C, D, E, right? A, B, C, D, E, F, points to cap. And if you have those points, if you have a majority of those points, like, and you're getting kills, like it's weeding down the amount of like players that can be spawned back into the map and like the score, and you're trying to deplete the other person to zero. It's a decent game mode. Honestly, I don't think it's all that fun, and the like win condition for this game mode is really confusing if you're a viewer for like a streamer, unless you play a lot of Battlefield or have played a lot of like Battlefield or Battlefront, which is the same type of game mode. What Battlefield really needs to do, although maybe everyone would argue they need to release a BR, that's not really what I want to argue, is they probably should have released a new game mode as their beta, if they really wanted to attract new players. Regardless, right? The new game modes that theoretically are coming with Battlefield could actually keep this game alive and have some good future for it. So game modes like Rush, where it's a lot more, the fights are a lot more dictated. It seems to be more catering to like a Call of Duty play style of like, you're actually engaging in fights constantly. Because one of the biggest criticisms of Conquest has been the difficulty to stay in fights. But the difficulty to stay in fights has been one of the biggest criticisms, which is classic Battlefield. Like, if you don't want to be in a fight at all time, you don't have to. But if you're a Call of Duty player, I mean, in Warzone, there are places where you could really stay outside of the fighting. But even in Warzone, you're going to be fighting a lot more often because you're a team of 3 and there's 147 other people on the map, right? So on this map, it's 64 v 6 or whatever it is, 64 v 64, and it's a very chaotic type environment. So difficulty stay in fights, chaotic fights, not clear on objectives. These criticisms don't really come again from Battlefield OGs, because the Battlefield OGs are like really fine with the way this works. But when you're watching it from a viewer's perspective or somebody that hasn't played a lot of Battlefield, it feels very chaotic. And of course, you can learn the different conditions, right? You can learn about how, like, hey, we need to be capping certain points because they're the easier points to cap. It's more difficult for players to move to these points based on the like longevity between where they can spawn and where they can't spawn. You know, there's a lot of vehicles, all that good stuff that you can move around the map. But if you don't have a vehicle, it's like a running simulator. Like, you really have to run. But I would argue that's the same, you know, that's the same for Warzone, etc. It's like, if you don't have vehicles, like, and you're just trying to run between a lot of POIs, it'll take you a long time. Yeah, and then there were some issues, of course, with bots. There's a lot of bots in the beta right now, and people were like, this is not rewarding to kill a bunch of AI. I didn't really mind it because I just wanted to get kills. But, you know, that's kind of part of the game. My thought process on this is that probably because open beta, early access was more limited than people thought for the amount of people playing it. And they probably it like expanded all players across a couple different servers to make sure that their games didn't crash, and so they threw AI into the game to like really limit the amount of players playing. But regardless, there was a lot of other issues with the Battlefield 1 beta. Of course, it's a beta, so theoretically you're running on an older game that is actually being released, and as well as, like, you know, if you're trying to play this game and you're trying to play on a controller and I have to unplug a foot pedal, it's like, okay, this is ridiculous. And there was a lot of issues where there were like people phasing through maps and vehicles doing things that they shouldn't be doing. But that's the beta. Like, that's part of betas, is that they're gonna have bugs, and you got to kind of expect that. The thing that, you know, JGOD tweeted was like, I wasn't saying that I don't want to do Battlefield because I didn't like it because of the bugs. Like, I knew it was a beta. I didn't like it because of the way the game worked. Things that I really liked about it was I really like the attachments. I really like the attachment system. Changing attachments mid-game actually feels really fun. And I was able to use a sniper at pretty much every single range. I will say I have zero incentive on Battlefield at all to use anything besides a sniper. Sniping on Battlefield is very fun, very rewarding, and feels like I'm having a good time. But that's really all it is. When I swap to like an AR and I'm just fighting people, it feels like, what is the point of all of these fights? Like, I need to be going and like capping objectives and stuff like that. So it feels like the game is fun to play for the gameplay, but it's not fun to play for the win condition. Does that make sense? Like, there's a reason that most lobbies were pretty much a crapshoot to see who won, because there was hardly ever a time where people were actually playing objectives. I ended up playing objectives one time with an actual squad. I was playing with Hunter and Stan, and we actually played objectives, and us three single-handedly like almost won our team the entire map, because we actually fought on objectives and no one fought on objectives. You know what I mean? And so that's really the issue that we can always come back to with Battlefield, is like, okay, these are the issues with the beta, but also the Battlefield game modes just don't feel clear or fun comparatively for a lot of people, especially Battle Royale players and Battle Royale purists. So when it comes to the future of Battlefield, where can they succeed? I think when it comes to future, they need enticing game modes that are fun to win, not necessarily just fun to kill. And this is the issue with Battlefield. Like, it is fun to kill people in Battlefield. It doesn't feel that fun to play objectives and go for the win, which is why a lot of people don't, right? So that's what they need going forward, is enticing game modes. They also need to kindle some sort of competitive landscape. This is really difficult to do, whether it's esports, tourneys, etc. This is difficult to do in this game because of the nature of the game. It's not a battle royale. You don't have specific teams of 3s or 4s or anything like that. You basically would have to put together, and this would actually be really fun, but some sort of content creator tournament where you have like 64 individuals all on one team, and versus 64 individuals all on the other team. But it's like, you can't run comms for 64 players. Like, that's not something you can do. So how does it work for the actual like tournament? Like, you have teams of 4 that all load in on one team, and it's 64. So 16 teams of 4 on one team, 16 teams of 4 on the other team, and you do some sort of draft style to figure out who's on what team. But then it's just about, hey, everybody's under the assumption we need to play objectives, and like, you know, blah 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 blah. Like, there's a lot of considerations that need to be put into place to actually make this into something where it's you have a tournament scene. But I would argue that not having a tournament scene, and like Bance is saying in the chat, If you like just say, oh, Battlefield's not COD, it doesn't need this stuff, it's not going to succeed in the long run. And I understand what Bands is saying, especially if you're a Battlefield OG. Like, the diehards are going to love the game as it's originally intended to be played, but ultimately, if you're trying to actually create a future for this game, it's not going to be that case. And you could say the game is still being played, but so is GTA 5, you know what I mean? So is a lot of other games back in the day, based on the OG players that love that game. When we're talking about actual, real, tangible success in this new age of gaming, if you're not going to run a battle royale, which I'm not saying and arguing that everyone has to, you certainly need to get to a point, right, where you can actually entice new players and players that haven't played a lot of Battlefields in the past to continue playing your games, because the people that played the Battlefields in the past, 2014 Battlefield players 8 years ago, there's probably a lot less people still playing video games 8 years later than there were when Battlefield 4 originally came out. And so Battlefield's got to cater to a larger audience, which is what they're trying to do with some of the new mechanics with the game. It's pissing off OGs, and the new players that are coming in are saying, this isn't as good as the game I usually play, I'm probably out. And so, yeah, I would love a battle royale for this game. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the only thing that could, you know, bring in a positive future for the game, but I think it could certainly help, right? And so, whether it's a BR or some other game mode that feels competitive, we need to kindle some sort of competitive landscape for this game. And anybody that says differently, like, hey, tourneys will mess up this game completely, they will if we don't have a game mode that works for tournaments. Like, Conquest doesn't work for tournaments. Conquest would work for, like, a content creator tourney. That's great. But, like, for a real competitive landscape, albeit it'll probably be small, there has to be some sort of game mode that works under that instance. And the beta is obviously not showcasing that yet. So the question will be, what is there in the future? And what possibilities are there for content in the future? Because here's the thing, content creators, streamers, you know, YouTubers, all of these things were around back in the other Battlefield days, right? That was all around. However, the new age of the amount of streamers, the amount of YouTubers, the amount that content actually influences the game is so much higher and so much valuable now, so much more valuable now, that games basically have to cater to those streamers, content creators, YouTubers, etc., because that will determine whether or not their game will be successful to some sort of a degree point that is more than just marginal, right? It's if back in 2015, 2016, 2017, the degree point that you had to actually think about your streamer content creator community was like 5%, it's more like 15-20% now. Sure, there's a lot of casual players out there that don't watch YouTube on their favorite game. Sure, there's a lot of casual players out there that don't watch live streamers on their favorite game, but the number is dwindling that are not influenced by the streamer gamer community. And I would say Warzone is one of the more particular ways that's been the case, and the thing that started that was Fortnite. So of course, battle royales are a huge deal in this space. I'm not saying every game needs to have a battle royale, but I would say, you know, one of the tweets I made earlier was that the battle royale game mode has spoiled viewers, not necessarily in a bad way, but the idea of this, you know, high stakes for a win condition feels really comfortable and easy to watch comparatively to like a multiplayer arena or anything like that. So I don't know, it'll be really interesting to see what the future of the game will be. I think you know, esports, enticing new game modes. Of course, people are going to ask for a battle royale, so I'm going to put it on here. You know, they have their hazard mode. I don't think this will be done well, to be honest with you. It's supposed to be Tarkov-esque. And although Tarkov has seen some very limited success, I'm not sure this game mode will do well. The question will really be Portal. I think Portal is going to be the biggest thing that will bring about some sort of success for Battlefield. The question will be, what will Portal look like? How will it influence the way content creators and streamers, etc., can actually utilize, you know, this game mode or this series of game modes to their advantages to create really good content around it? I don't know. There are a lot of conversations to be had about the future of the game, but right now it's not looking great because of what they've been able to release. But of course, we've only seen the beta, so when the game actually drops, we'll have a lot more. We'll have a broader picture of what they actually want the future of Battlefield to look like based on the actual game release, of course. So